as they step into their role of leadership. Standing behind these new leaders are the more seasoned NCOs, those who've gone through the fires of refinement, as it were, having honed their leadership skills. We ask that you continue to bless them with wisdom as they assist in the development of these new leaders standing before them today. May they find a deepened sense of pride in their role of mentoring these fine young men and women going forward. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Reason on.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Good morning, commanders, command sergeant majors, distinguished guests, family, friends, and fellow non-commissioned officers. Welcome to the USAACE Non-Commissioned Officer Induction Ceremony hosted by 110th Aviation Brigade. Today, we will recognize the passing of soldiers into the ranks of the United States Army Non-Commissioned Officer Corps. The tradition of passing a soldier on to be a non-commissioned officer can be traced to the army of Frederick the Great. You will notice the two non-commissioned officers guarding the non-commissioned officer arch with their sharp uniforms, clean boots, and NCO-issued swords. While in battle dress, the NCO wears boots. They always have. Well, almost. Many soldiers at Valley Forge did not have shoes, much less boots. They marched and fought with no more than rags that were wrapped around bleeding, frostbitten feet. Those volunteers literally knew the meaning of a come-as-you-are war. From the crude, rough, and soled moccasins worn by soldiers more than 246 years ago, to the smooth and polished boots of today, boots have been fundamental to soldiering. Whether strapped, laced, buttoned, buckled, or wrapped by leggings, boots have marched, paced, sloshed, trampled, jumped, and charged over or through dirt, mud, snow, brush, rock, sand, and water. In peace and war, the boots of the American soldier have left their prints in many places, to name a few. With boots on, U.S. soldiers have fought wars, policed cities, stood between hostile forces, provided humanitarian relief, rescued civilians, and died. Boots have been buried with soldiers, removed from bodies, amputated along with legs, and shattered by mines. No matter where, or when, or what the mission, an Army NCO was there, wearing boots. Their issued weapon enables them to cut to the heart of the matter and ensure only those that are qualified and are a demonstrated true leader of soldiers may pass under this sacred archway. In the beginning, before one could be fully recognized as an NCO, they were required to stand 4 watches, one every 4 days. At the first watch, a soldier appeared and claimed a gift of bread and brandy. The sergeant of the guard came to the second watch for beer and tobacco. The first sergeant reserved their visit for the third watch and was presented with a glass of wine and a piece of tobacco on a tin plate. On the morning after the fourth watch, the sun would rise on a new NCO. Today, we commemorate this rite of passage as a celebration of the newly promoted sergeants joining the ranks of the Non-Commissioned Officer Corps to emphasize and build on the pride we all share as members of such an elite corps. Ladies and gentlemen, please listen to the voices of the NCOs from the past, present, and future as they light the candles. First Sergeant Brown will light the red candle, which represents the past and the blood which was shed.
I am that sergeant, a non-commissioned officer in the Army of the United States of America. For over 245 years, I have trained to lead our nation's soldiers, and with them have purchased freedom with our blood. To the tyrant, we are the day of reckoning. To the oppressed, we represent a hope for the future. I was there in the beginning.
First Sergeant Kessel will now light the white candle, which represents the present and purity.
I led my soldiers across that line of death, drawn in the sand by a tyrant, and in 100 hours crushed his army. Against an enemy that knew they had no hope of surviving a head-to-head battle and resulted to guerrilla warfare, I stood firm at my outpost and showed that the American Army is the supreme fighting force for freedom in the world.
First Sergeant Ishmael will now light the blue candle, which represents the future and loyalty to our country.
I am the sergeant, leading my soldiers on patrol, manning checkpoints, executing logistics, and securing sites across all domains of battle. I am a warrior, and I will train my soldiers to live the warrior ethos. I'm prepared to go anywhere on this earth to protect the power of our country, to implement peace, and guarantee democracy.
Ladies and gentlemen, Command Sergeant Major Julio Santos of the 110th Aviation Brigade.
Good morning. Command Sergeant Major Coley, commanders, fellow sergeants majors, members of the Sergeant Majors Association, the Wiregrass chapter, distinguished guests, families and friends in attendance and viewing from abroad, thank you for attending today's ceremony. In the journey of leadership, the NCO induction ceremony marks the elevation of dedicated soldiers into the esteemed ranks of non-commissioned officers, where competence and commitment converge. And today we celebrate that tradition by welcoming some of our newly promoted sergeants into the NCO Corps. But before we get started, I would like to take a minute to recognize the soldiers and NCOs who put this event together. So if you could, please join me in a round of applause. Now, I would like to formally introduce our guest speaker. He spent his early days working on the AH-1 Cobra and the OH-58 Kiowa Warrior as an armament, avionics, electrical systems repairer. He served in nearly every leadership position within the aviation community, and today he's our 18th United States Army's Aviation Center of Excellence Branch Command Sergeant Major. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Command Sergeant Major Kirk R. Colby.
Good morning, team. How's everybody doing? Cool. So it's great to finally be here for one of the most important ceremonies that we conduct here across the post. But most importantly, it's an honor to have the opportunity to kind of say a few words on behalf of the non-commissioned officer corps that are being inducted today. So before I get started, please join me in another round of applause for all the inductees that we have here today. Fellow commanders, distinguished guests, leaders, families, friends, thank you for your attendance and always for your support. To our inductees, thank you for not only volunteering to serve our nation, but also volunteering to lead in our Army. Today we have a large group of non-commissioned officers participating in today's ceremony, and it's their moment to embrace and celebrate this time-honored tradition. So I'll keep my comments brief so we can enjoy the main attraction for these non-commissioned officers. But I think it's important to remind ourselves what our non-commissioned officer corps is for. I know that statement may sound a bit odd to the group of non-commissioned officers, but in order for us to know what the roles of our non-commissioned officers are, we must first know what we are for, our purpose. So let's briefly reflect on the history of the non-commissioned officer corps. The United States Army adapted its non-commissioned officer corps from the European Continental Army back in 1775. At the time, the purpose of their NCOs were only to instill order and discipline across camps when they were not engaged in battle on the front lines. While they were engaged in battle, their jobs were to ensure that soldiers stayed on line and fight regardless of how horrific the battle was. During those times, it was the attrition-style warfare. So it was important to ensure that all soldiers did not lay down weapon, did not lay down their arms and retreat when bullets started flying. Those were roles of the non-commissioned officers back in 1775. They had very little authorities and seldom were allowed to engage with officers. As tactics would evolve and the Army moved from a linear battle, the non-commissioned officer corps began to gain increased responsibilities and ensure recognition across combat, as they took on roles that would normally be filled by officers during the Civil War, World War I, and World War II. Following the implementation of the enlisted education system, the NCO Corps was transformed and empowered as primary trainers, leaders, enforcers of standards and discipline. Non-commissioned officers, you are the backbone of the Army, and you must never forget what you are for. Today, non-commissioned officers is deeply respected by enemies and the envy of other armies around the world. The NCOs being inducted today and those that are in the audience are truly the decisive advantage of our Army. We live in a world that is very complex and at times can be uncertain. All you have to do is watch the news and see what's unfolding in Syria, Ukraine, and certain regions across Iraq. You can rest assured our nation will call on us again in the near future, and they need us to be ready. We must all recommit our fundamental purpose to our profession and the solemn duty which has made our Army the most lethal fighting force on the planet. I challenge us to remember what you are for, which is to take care of our most precious resources, our all-volunteer force that is comprised of American sons and daughters. I challenge you to properly train and lead those that are in your charge, so they too may have a fighting chance on the battlefield. I am proud in each and every one of you. Thanks for the selfless service and the sacrifices of both you and your families. Thanks for the leadership of these great soldiers and sergeants majors and everyone who had a role in making this ceremony possible. Let's continue to train hard, finish the year strong, enjoy the holidays with friends and families, and bring everyone back safely. Above the best, fly Army, this will defend.
Ladies and gentlemen, you will now witness the signing and issuing of the NCO charge by the inductees and Command Sergeant Major Santos. This document denotes acceptance of the duties and responsibilities of the non-commissioned officer.
How many candidates do we have to induct?
Sergeant Major, there are 60 candidates. As leaders, NCOs must be proven worthy of the rank of sergeant. Keep an attentive ear as you listen to your first sergeants while they give you words of wisdom and experience.
Stand at ease. Inductees, the place you will leave is a place to be respected and remembered, for there remain your subordinates. However, you are never to stand there again unless you are no longer eligible to continue as a non-commissioned officer.
The place you're going is sacred, which symbolizes the past, present, and future non-commissioned officers.
From this place, you will carry out the responsibilities of your position. Never forget where you came from, or that you must lead by example, and always take care of your soldiers.
The NCOs within your unit also stand behind you as you learn and grow. Stay within the circle of non-commissioned officers. Solicit their help and knowledge. Accept their guidance, because they have been where you're about to go. Inductees, attention!
Inductees, raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your full name.
I,
Will discharge carefully and diligently
will discharge carefully and diligently
the duties of the grade
the duties of the grade
to which I have been promoted,
to which I have been promoted,
and uphold the traditions
and uphold the traditions
and standards of the Army.
and standards of the Army.
I understand that soldiers of lesser rank
I understand that soldiers of lesser rank
are required to obey my lawful orders.
are required to obey my lawful orders.
Accordingly, I accept responsibility
Accordingly, I accept responsibility
for their actions as a non-commissioned officer.
for their actions as a non-commissioned officer.
I accept the charge
I accept the charge
to observe and follow
to observe and follow
the orders and directions
the orders and directions
given by supervisors
given by supervisors,
acting according to the laws,
acting according to the laws,
articles, and rules
articles, and rules
governing the discipline of the Army.
governing the discipline of the Army.
I will correct conditions
I will correct conditions
detrimental to the readiness thereof.
detrimental to the readiness thereof.
In so doing,
In so doing,
I will fulfill my greatest obligation
I will fulfill my greatest obligation
as a leader
as a leader
and thereby confirm
and thereby confirm
my status as a non-commissioned officer.
my status as a non-commissioned officer.
Inductees, do you swear or affirm to uphold and secure the values and the responsibilities of the non-commissioned officer corps?
Yes, Sergeant Major.
Inductees, are you ready to pass through the lines of authority and accept the responsibility of a non-commissioned officer?
Yes, Sergeant Major.
All but the last rank, please take your seats.
Who will vouch for these NCOs to be inducted?
I do, Sergeant Major.
Now that you have been officially charged, step forward to receive your charge. Take them with you and display them proudly. As you leave here today, never forget your role as a non-commissioned officer. Staff Sergeant Paris Ricardio. Staff Sergeant Rizzo Stefan. Sergeant Adams Jeremy. Sergeant Adams Jared. Sergeant Alexander David. Sergeant Aviles Aaron Yellis. Sergeant Beebe Orlando. Sergeant Bivens Caleb. Sergeant Blake Ryan. Sergeant Broadway Jordan. Sergeant Butler Kamani. Sergeant Carrillo David. Sergeant Cook Justin. Sergeant Craven Brandon. Sergeant Cross Samuel. Sergeant DiCostanzo Anthony. Sergeant Downing Richard. Sergeant Dye Allison. Sergeant Eddie Keith. Sergeant Graham Annabelle. Sergeant Grant Zackett. Sergeant Hargrove Rayburn. Sergeant Haseman Jarrett. Sergeant Hilliard Aisha Marie. Sergeant Hutley, Lance. Sergeant Johnston, Amber. Sergeant Kim, Skyla. Sergeant Lee, Hung. Sergeant Lindley, Joshua. Sergeant Little, Sean. Sergeant Law, Timothy. Sergeant Lowry, Austin. Sergeant Meredith, Austin. Sergeant Merriweather, Liliana. Sergeant Mora, Desiree. Sergeant Posada, Augustine. Sergeant Prince, Aaron.
Attention. Right face. Both markings.
Sergeant Prince, Dominique. Sergeant Kilis Maldonado, Giovanni. Sergeant Runyon, Bradley. Sergeant Sanchez, Andre. Sergeant Santiago, Benjamin. Sergeant Shaw, Gregory. Scott Brianna. Sergeant Shetter Austin. Sergeant Smith Robert. Sergeant Stats Alexander. Sergeant Truge Thomas. Sergeant Valkanos Trevor. Sergeant Vargas John. Sergeant Velez Plaza Victor. Sergeant Washington Bianca. Sergeant Washington Shoshani. Sergeant Walton Shamonte. Sergeant Wirt Logan. Sergeant Whitman Aaron. Sergeant Willis Zakia. Sergeant Zachariah Shiv. Ladies and gentlemen, a soldier's request.
Treat me with respect, Sergeant, for no heart in the entire world is more loyal than the heart of an American soldier. Do not break my spirit with your words, Sergeant. Know that I will do as you demand. Your guidance, patience, and understanding will better teach me to be, know, and do.
Trust me, soldier. You have the mind and the will to be trained. I will tell you my highest truth if I know you are listening. Your trust is one of your most prized possessions. Working to earn it makes me a better leader. Speak with me often, for the praise and counseling you give is expected. I am an American soldier, expected to be trained. Discipline must be a part of my life. Train me for the elements, Sergeant, for I must learn to fight and win in the cold, the wet, and the desert. Those who would be my enemies will use these elements. I must be prepared.
Follow me, soldier, for the steps I take are taken more carefully if I know yours will follow. Personal sacrifices are easy, but your safety I hold dear. Make them one, and I will lead you as best as I can.
I ask for no greater glory, Sergeant, than to defend our country and our way of life against all enemies, both foreign and domestic. Allow me this privilege, Sergeant. Train me, provide me the necessities of food and drink. Train me to be self-sufficient so that I may lead the way and stand ready, willing and able to protect you with my life if necessary, should your life be in danger.
Obey me, soldier, not because you have to, but because you want to. Your actions give my words power. A leader's influence is limited by the activity that leader can influence. Empower me so that I can use that power to your benefit.
Train me, Sergeant, so I too one day can be called Sergeant. Trainer of soldiers, backbone of the Army. Train me to accept those responsibilities which are yours. Train me to train my soldiers to be the greatest defenders of freedom in the world. Sergeant, train me to be a sergeant. I shall leave this army knowing that with my last step and my last breath, that my fate was safest in your hands.
Sergeant,
Train me so I too get on the title sergeant.
Respect me, soldier, because respect is a two-way street. It is easily given to those for whom it is readily received. When you show me what respect looks like, I can keep myself in line. Soldier, I'm a leader. Give me a soldier to lead, for I am at my best when you are at yours. Push yourself, and thereby push me to be a better leader for you every day. I promise I will rise to the challenge.
We will lead you.
Sergeant First Class Jacob Dursky, Vice President of the Fort Novosel Sergeant Audi Murphy Club, will now present our guest speaker, Command Sergeant Major Coley, with a small token of appreciation for his kind words of wisdom.
Sergeant Major, on behalf of the NCOs of today's induction ceremony, we thank you for your guidance and kind words. We look forward to achieving everything that you intend for us. Thank you all.
Every soldier has a sergeant. Every soldier deserves a leader who is a capable trainer, trustworthy, genuinely concerned for their health and welfare, and develops them to be the leaders of tomorrow. The soldier's creed and the warrior ethos are compelling obligations we expect our soldiers to live by. Likewise, we expect our leaders to live by those obligations and the creed of the non-commissioned officer. The creed of the non-commissioned officer has served as a guiding document for non-commissioned officers since its inception in 1973, though its concepts have always been a part of our Corps. Each major paragraph begins with 3 letters, N, C, O. These words have inspired non-commissioned officers and have served as a compass to guide us through the difficult paths that we travel. Today, our newest non-commissioned officers will affirm their commitment to the professionalism of our Corps and become a part of the backbone of the Army. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand and join our inductees and all NCOs past and present as they recite the creed of the non-commissioned officer, emphasizing their duties and responsibilities of the grade to which they have been promoted. Sergeant Zakia Willis of 1st 223rd Aviation Regiment will now lead the NCOs in the creed of the non-commissioned officer.
The creed of the non-commissioned officer.
No one is more professional than I. I am a non-commissioned officer, a leader of soldiers. As a non-commissioned officer, I realize that I am a member of the time honored Corps, which is known as the backbone of the Army. I am proud of the Corps of non-commissioned officers, and will at all times conduct myself so as to bring credit upon the Corps, the military service, and my country, regardless of the situation in which I find myself. are responsibilities inherent in that role. All soldiers are entitled to outstanding leadership. I will provide that leadership. I know my soldiers, and I will always place their needs above my own. I will communicate consistently with my soldiers and never leave them uninformed. I will be fair and impartial when recommending both rewards and punishments. Officers of my unit will have maximum time to accomplish their duties. They will not have to accomplish mine. I will earn the respect and confidence as well as that of my soldiers. I will be loyal to those with whom I serve, seniors, peers, and subordinates alike. I will exercise initiative by taking appropriate action in the absence of orders. I will not compromise my integrity nor my moral courage. I will not forget, nor will I allow my comrades to forget, that we are professionals, non-commissioned officers, leaders.
Please remain standing for the benediction given by Staff Sergeant Owen Spicer, singing of the aviation song, the Army song, and the departure of the official party.
I invite you once more to join me in prayer. God, once more we come to you asking your blessing on all of these non-commissioned officers here today, both new and experienced. Impress upon the necessity for them to remain committed to teaching, mentoring, and leading as they go forward from here. Give them strength to tackle the challenges that lie before them, wisdom to act in a manner that is both pleasing before you and courageous to those whom they lead, and courage to stand for what is right and for what is just. May they find a deepened sense of pride in their newfound role and embody their calling as our Army's leaders. We ask these things in your name. Amen. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the formal portion of the ceremony. Take a moment to congratulate our new inductees. A reminder for all NCOs, please join us at the landing at 1400 for the cake cutting ceremony that will be conducted with Command Sergeant Major Santos